Willowbrook, Ohio, was a small town where the beauty of the seasons changed quietly. Claire Wilson found true fulfillment in her daily work as a nurse at the local general hospital. Her routine consisted of sending her 6-year-old son Daniel off to school in the morning, finishing her shift at the hospital, and then waiting for her husband, Andrew, who worked as a construction site supervisor, to return home. "Mom, look! I drew this at school today." Daniel held up a colorful crayon drawing with a pure smile on his face. It showed a dog, a cat, and a family surrounding them. Claire gently stroked her son's head as she pinned the drawing to the refrigerator. "That's a lovely picture, Daniel. Dad will be so happy when he sees it." However, lately Andrew hadn't been showing as much interest in his son's artwork as before. About 6 months ago, changes had begun to appear in him. With the excuse that work was busy, he was coming home later and increasingly spending weekends away from home, saying he had to go to work. Claire's parents, Harold and Ruth Carter, lived in a quiet residential neighborhood in the same town. Now retired, their greatest joy was spending time with their grandson Daniel. At least that's how it appeared. Julia, Claire's sister, also participated in the monthly family dinners. Julia had found success as a sales representative for a major furniture manufacturer in Columbus. Enjoying her single and free lifestyle, she was a stark contrast to her sister's domestic life. "Claire, what do you think of this children's chair? It's from our new line and it's selling really well." Julia had spread out the latest product catalog at last month's family dinner. At that moment, Claire thought she caught Julia giving Andrew a special look, but she convinced herself it was just her imagination. "It's lovely. I'm sure it would be perfect for Daniel." That night, as usual, Daniel was cuddling with his grandparents, sitting on Harold's lap as he read a picture book. However, Claire had noticed Julia giving Daniel cold glances several times. It was momentary, and she thought she might have been mistaken, but something about it left her with an uncomfortable feeling. On the drive home, Andrew was silent. When Claire asked, "What's wrong?" he replied, "I'm just tired." Daniel had fallen asleep in the back seat. "Dad, are you busy lately?" To Daniel's question, Andrew answered briefly through the mirror, "Yes, we have a big project." The following week, Harold called. "Claire, how about going hiking with the family this Saturday? Julia will be there too. Let's all enjoy nature together for the first time in a while." "That sounds nice. Daniel will be thrilled." Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious. "I'll ask Andrew too," Claire suggested it to her husband. Surprisingly, Andrew, who would normally decline, saying, "I have work," answered, "Let's go." Daniel, who loved nature, was excited about the family hiking trip. "Yay! We're going to the forest. Will we see animals too?" However, the day before departure, Andrew called. "I'm sorry, but urgent work came up. You all go without me." Claire was disappointed, but resolved to cherish the time with her son. "It's okay, Daniel. Let's enjoy ourselves even without Dad." Daniel looked a bit sad, but quickly recovered his spirits. The morning of the hike dawned with a clear blue sky. Claire got up early to prepare Daniel's lunch and packed drinks, snacks, and a first aid kit into a small backpack. As a nurse, she always prepared for emergencies. "Daniel, are you ready?" Daniel came bounding down the stairs, wearing a small jacket and hat, his eyes shining with excitement. "All ready, Mom. I brought my magnifying glass too. I'm going to observe insects." Claire smiled at her son's curiosity and pure joy. Though she regretted that Andrew wasn't with them, she was determined to cherish this mother-son time. The doorbell rang, and when Claire opened the door, her parents' car was parked outside. Her father, Harold, was in the driver's seat, her mother, Ruth, in the passenger seat, and Julia in the back seat. Everyone was dressed for the outing, with Julia in particular wearing expensive hiking boots and stylish outdoor wear. "Good morning, Claire. What wonderful weather we have." Her father Harold's voice sounded unusually cheerful. As Claire and Daniel got into the back seat with Julia, Claire noticed something different about the atmosphere. Her parents exchanged brief glances, and Julia was strangely tense, staring at her cell phone. "So Andrew couldn't make it after all," Julia said. There seemed to be something hidden in her voice that Claire couldn't quite make out. "Yes. He said urgent work came up. It's disappointing, but it can't be helped." "Yes, it can't be helped." Julia's response seemed a bit too quick. As the car left town and climbed the mountain road toward the forest, her parents were unusually talkative. Ruth in particular kept repeating, "Today will be a special day." Claire felt uncomfortable with these words, but thought it was just expectation for a pleasant family outing. Daniel was absorbed in the scenery outside the window, pointing at passing trees and rocks, and repeatedly asking, "What's that? And what's this?" Grandfather Harold answered his grandson's questions more enthusiastically than usual, occasionally exchanging glances with Ruth through the rearview mirror. After driving for about an hour, the car turned onto a narrow, unpaved road. Claire realized this was an unfamiliar route. "Dad, where are we going?" When Claire asked, Harold shrugged. "I found a different route. It's a place tourists don't visit much. The view is amazing." The car finally stopped at a small, undeveloped parking area. There were no other cars around, and silence dominated the area. As everyone got out of the car and shouldered their backpacks, Claire felt uneasy again. Her parents and Julia had too little luggage for a long hike. "Dad, are you sure this trail is okay? There's nobody here?" Claire asked worriedly. "Don't worry, Claire. This place is a hidden gem. The view from the top is breathtaking," Harold answered with confidence. "That's right, Claire. Trust us. We just wanted to show you a special place," Ruth added. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes seemed to be saying something else. Daniel was already under a nearby tree, searching through fallen leaves. "Mom, look! I found a pretty stone!" Claire went to her son and shared in his small discovery. Meanwhile, Julia kept checking her phone repeatedly. "Julia, you keep looking at your phone. Are you in contact with someone?" When Claire asked, Julia looked up with obvious surprise. "Huh? No, I was just checking the time." Julia's voice rose slightly. "The time? Is something happening?" "No, nothing. It's just a habit." Julia quickly put her phone away. The hike began, and the group proceeded along a narrow path through the forest. The trail gradually became steeper, and Claire was glad that she and Daniel had come with proper equipment. In contrast, she was becoming concerned about her parents and Julia's attire. "Why are you so lightly dressed for a long hike?" When Claire asked her mother, Ruth waved her hand to indicate there was nothing to worry about. "We'll be fine. Just going there and back. Besides, today is a special day, that phrase again." Claire tilted her head, but thought she should catch up with Daniel, who was walking ahead, holding hands with his grandfather. The sky, occasionally visible through the trees, was still blue and clear, but clouds of anxiety were gathering in Claire's heart. She felt uncomfortable with the glances exchanged between her parents and Julia, the unnatural conversation, and most of all, their behavior. That was so different from a normal hike. The path suddenly opened up, and they emerged near a steep cliff. A deep valley spread out below, with the glimmer of a small lake visible in the distance. The wind blew strongly, and Claire instinctively gripped Daniel's hand tightly. She had a fear of heights, and her legs froze just being near the cliff. "It's beautiful, Mom!" Daniel was captivated by the scenery. "Look, Daniel! Can you see the lake in the distance?" Harold placed his hand on Daniel's shoulder, trying to guide him toward the cliff. "Dad, that's dangerous. Keep Daniel away from the cliff." Claire's voice clearly contained fear. "It's all right, Claire. I just want to show him the view." Harold's voice feigned calmness, but his eyes were cold and determined. "Daniel, come here!" Claire called out strongly. Daniel responded to his mother's voice and tried to move away from his grandfather. At that moment, Claire felt Julia approaching her. She noticed that Julia's expression had changed completely. Mother Ruth also stood unnaturally behind Harold and Julia, and the three of them seemed to be surrounding Claire and Daniel. A sudden silence fell, with only the sound of the wind drifting around them. Surrounded by her parents and Julia, a cold fear ran down Claire's spine. The wind tousled her hair, and the view beyond the cliff was beautiful, but that was the least of her concerns now. Just as she tried to pull Daniel to her side, Julia suddenly grabbed Claire's arm. Her sister's fingers dug into her skin, causing pain. "Claire, there's something I want to show you." Julia's voice pretended to be calm, but her eyes held a cruelty that Claire had never seen before. "What? Julia, let Daniel come to me first." Claire desperately reached out toward her son. "No, I want to show Daniel too." Julia's mouth twisted eerily. Just as Claire tried to shake off Julia's hand, Father Harold picked up Daniel. As Daniel's small body left the ground, he exclaimed in surprise, "Grandpa!" Claire screamed in terror. "Let go of Daniel! What are you trying to do?" Claire's scream echoed through the forest, startling birds into flight. As if in response, Mother Ruth abruptly moved behind her. "Claire, you were always a good child." Ruth's voice was strangely gentle. "But sometimes sacrifices are necessary for the family." With those words, Ruth pushed Claire forcefully toward the cliff. Caught off guard, Claire lost her balance and staggered several steps toward the edge of the cliff. As her feet nearly left the ground, understanding flashed through her mind like lightning. Her family was trying to kill her and Daniel. Before her eyes, frozen with fear, Father Harold made a motion as if to throw Daniel toward the cliff. Daniel's scream pierced Claire's ears. "Mom!" That voice awakened the maternal instinct dormant within Claire. Forgetting even the danger to her own life, she desperately lunged to grab and hold her son. The moment her fingers touched Daniel's jacket, Julia pushed her strongly from behind. "Why?" Claire's scream vanished into the sky. Claire and Daniel fell from the cliff. During the fall, Claire instinctively held Daniel tight, shielding her son with her body. The two of them tumbled down, hitting trees and rocks along the cliff face. Sharp pain shot through Claire's entire body, and her vision flickered. "Daniel! Daniel!" Calling her son's name, she curled her body to somehow protect him. Each impact assaulted her back, shoulders, and legs. But she never let go of Daniel. With a final major impact, they were violently slammed to the ground. Intense pain shot through Claire's body, and for a moment, she nearly lost consciousness. But the desire to ensure her son's safety pulled her back from the sea of unconsciousness. When Claire opened her eyes, Daniel was trembling slightly under her body. Her entire body screamed with pain, and her right leg and left arm had become immobile. They were probably broken. But strangely, Daniel, protected by her body, seemed to have escaped serious injury. "Daniel, are you okay?" Claire's hoarse voice was barely audible. Daniel answered in a small, trembling voice. "Mom, are you okay?" "Daniel, are you hurt?" Claire desperately tried to check her son's body. "It hurts a little, but I'm okay." Daniel's voice was shaking, but steady. Voices could be heard from the cliff above. Claire looked up, taking great care not to move her neck. She could see her parents and Julia peering down from the edge of the cliff. In the twilight, their silhouettes appeared black and ominous. "Can you see? Are they moving?" Her mother Ruth's voice carried on the wind. "No, they don't seem to be moving," her father Harold's low voice answered. "We need to check. We have to go down." Julia's voice had a hint of urgency. Claire instinctively hugged her son tighter and closed her eyes. If they came down and found them still alive, the thought was too terrifying. At that moment, the words Daniel whispered in his mother's ear nearly stopped Claire's heart. "Mom, we shouldn't move yet." Claire was amazed at the words of her 6-year-old son. Daniel had understood the situation and realized they needed to play dead. Despite her surprise at her son's wisdom, Claire did as he suggested. She remained still, and Daniel likewise remained perfectly still in his mother's arms. After a moment of silence, Julia's voice was heard again from the cliff above. The wind had grown stronger, and mixed with the sound of swaying trees, their conversation reached them in fragments. "It's too dangerous to go down. They don't seem to be moving anymore." Julia's voice had a strange relief mixed in. "Let's leave them as they are. Nobody will come here." Father Harold's voice was calm as if they were discussing a mere accident cleanup. Claire really never thought it would come to this. Mother Ruth's voice sounded slightly shaken. However, it wasn't guilt, but rather anxiety about the change in plans. And then Julia's next words froze Claire's heart. Don't regret it. Now Andrew and I are free. We'll get the insurance money and the obstacles are gone. We never needed that child in the first place. Claire couldn't believe her ears. Her husband Andrew and her sister Julia. And insurance money? In her mind, the events of the past few months began to rapidly connect. Andrew's late returns home, Julia's unnatural glances, and this hiking trip. It had all been planned. Her husband and sister were having an affair and were trying to kill her and Daniel to get the insurance money. And even her parents had participated in the plan. Claire trembled with intense anger, fear, and the sadness of betrayal. But now, suppressing her emotions and protecting Daniel was the priority. She remained motionless, continuing to hold her son. After a while, they could hear footsteps moving away from the cliff above. Claire and Daniel continued to play dead until they were sure the others had gone. As the sun began to set behind the mountains and dark shadows began to fall on the forest, Claire finally spoke to her son in a small voice. "Daniel, you noticed well. If you hadn't said anything," Daniel answered in a trembling voice. "I heard Auntie talking on the phone with Dad before. She said they were planning something bad." Claire was surprised at her son's intelligence, but felt her heart breaking at the terrible truth. Daniel had already noticed something was wrong, and now he had nearly become a victim of that horrifying plan. To somehow save themselves, Claire tried to take out her cell phone, enduring the pain. However, the phone had been shattered by the impact of the fall. Looking around, they were in a deep valley. There was no sign of people from above, and the path leading down was unclear. Once the sun set, the situation would become even more difficult. "Daniel, listen. We need to get out of here, but I can't move my body. Can you walk?" Claire checked her son's condition. Daniel bravely answered, "Yes, Mom. I'll go get help." "No, I can't let you go alone. Let's move together." Little by little, Claire decided, no matter how painful it was, she couldn't leave her son alone, especially now, after being betrayed by her family. A life-or-death escape awaited Claire and Daniel. But as she gripped her son's small hand, she strengthened her determination to survive. They had been betrayed by their family and brought to the brink of death. But supporting each other, they took their first step forward, enduring pain and fear to somehow survive. Claire and Daniel slowly made their way down the steep slope below the cliff. Claire's right leg and left arm were in severe pain, probably broken. She bit her lip to endure the pain while moving little by little, relying on Daniel. "Mom, it's flatter over here!" Daniel went ahead of his mother, looking for a safe path. With bravery and calmness beyond his 6 years, Daniel was helping his mother. Sometimes he gathered branches from the surrounding trees to make a makeshift crutch for Claire. "Daniel, tell me if you get tired. We can rest, okay?" Claire worried about her son. "I'm fine, Mom. I'm strong," Daniel answered, puffing out his chest. In that small back, Claire felt an incredible reliability that nearly moved her to tears. By moonlight, they continued walking through the forest for hours. Claire's watch was still working and showed it was past 11 p.m. Daniel looked tired but never complained. "Let's rest a little." Claire sat down under a large tree. Daniel sat next to her, nestling in his mother's arms. "Mom, will Dad not come back anymore?" Daniel's small voice echoed in the darkness. Claire was at a loss for words. How could she explain that her husband had tried to kill them? That he was having an affair with her sister? That it was for insurance money? How could she make a 6-year-old child understand these things? "Daniel." "Dad." Claire carefully chose her words. "Dad won't be able to live with us anymore. But it's okay. I'll always protect you." Daniel nodded silently and snuggled closer to his mother. "Grandpa and Grandma, too?" "Yes, them too. Aunt Julia said she and Dad would go somewhere together, after we were gone." Claire stroked her son's head, holding back tears. Daniel had understood the situation from the adults' conversations. Her heart ached that such a burden had been placed on such small shoulders. "But it's okay. We're alive, and we'll always be together," Claire said firmly. After a short rest, they began walking again. By daybreak, they finally reached the main hiking trail where people passed. In the morning light, the mother and son, covered in sweat and dirt and full of wounds, caught the eye of a middle-aged couple hiking there. "Oh my! Are you all right?" The man rushed over. "Please help us! We fell from a cliff." Claire was finally able to ask others for help. The man's wife immediately called an ambulance, and Claire and Daniel were wrapped in blankets and given water. They were kind enough to share their hiking food and stayed with them until the ambulance arrived. "How did you fall from a cliff?" When the man asked, Claire hesitated for a moment. "I'll tell the police everything later," was all she answered. The ambulance arrived at the forest entrance, and Claire and Daniel were taken to the hospital. According to the doctor's diagnosis, as expected, Claire had multiple fractures in her right leg and left arm, as well as internal bleeding and bruises all over her body. However, her life was not in danger. Daniel, too, had miraculously escaped with only minor bruises and scratches. "Your mother was like a cushion for you," the doctor smiled at Daniel. "She's a brave mother." While Claire was receiving treatment and resting, there was a knock on the hospital room door. It was Detective Brown from the local police. He introduced himself in a gentle tone and expressed concern for Claire's condition. "Mrs. Wilson, are you able to talk? Can you tell me what happened on the mountain?" Claire took a deep breath and began to tell everything: the hiking plan, her parents, and Julia's behavior, and the moment they were pushed off the cliff. She also relayed Julia's words. "Now Andrew and I are free. We'll get the insurance money." Detective Brown responded calmly, though surprised, continuing to take notes. "We've contacted your husband Andrew, but he hasn't arrived yet," the detective said. "He's also part of the plan. He was apparently having an affair with my sister." Claire spoke the painful truth. Outside the hospital room, Daniel was talking with a child psychologist. He also explained the events in his own words and further detailed the content of phone calls he had heard between his aunt and father over the past few weeks. Daniel's testimony matched his mother's account, and the nature of the incident became clearer. Due to Detective Brown's swift investigation, Andrew, Julia, and both of Claire's parents were all arrested the next day. The interrogation revealed a horrifying plan. Andrew and Julia had been in a secret relationship for 2 years and had planned to kill Claire to obtain her $3 million life insurance policy. They had planned to eliminate Daniel as well, since he could potentially be a witness. Claire's parents had been promised $500,000 by Andrew to participate in the plan. The trial began, and Claire had to face her husband and family. She appeared in court in a wheelchair but stood at the witness stand with strong determination. "The people I trusted most, my husband, my parents, my sister, they tried to take my life and my son's. But we survived, because true strength lies in love. The bond between my son and me was stronger than their malice." Her words resonated throughout the courtroom, and sobs could be heard from the gallery. Daniel, too, bravely took the witness stand despite being a child. "Grandpa and Grandma pushed, and Mom protected me. Dad and Auntie are bad people." His simple words carried a powerful truth. In the defendant's box, Andrew and Julia hung their heads, but Claire's parents tried to stand up to say something. However, they were forced into silence by the judge's restraint. As a result of the trial, Andrew, Julia, and both of Claire's parents were all found guilty. Andrew and Julia received 25-year prison sentences for attempted murder, and Claire's parents were sentenced to 15 years. When leaving the courthouse, Claire was now using crutches. Her body was gradually recovering, but the wounds in her heart didn't seem likely to heal easily. Nevertheless, she gripped Daniel's small hand firmly, determined to move forward, step by step, toward a new future. "Mom, what are we going to do now?" Daniel asked. "A new beginning, Daniel. We're going to start a new life. Just the two of us." Claire had received tremendous support from her nursing colleague, Jennifer, whom she had met during her recovery period at the hospital. Jennifer herself was a domestic violence survivor and deeply empathized with Claire's situation. "Claire, I'm moved by the strength of you and Daniel. What are you going to do now?" Jennifer asked. "I haven't decided clearly yet, but I think Daniel and I need a new beginning. My sister lives in Colorado. Her town is a wonderful place. It might be perfect for a new start." Claire began to seriously consider Jennifer's suggestion. Daniel was also positive about going to a new place. Mom, are we going to a new house? Will I make friends? Daniel asked hopefully. I'm sure you will, Daniel. We're together, so we can overcome anything. Claire was standing at the edge of fate's cliff again, just as when she had fallen from the real cliff, but this time she had the courage to move forward with her son. She looked up at the sky and felt freedom. No one could hurt them anymore. She had learned the true meaning of family through a severe ordeal. On the day the trial verdict was delivered, the courtroom was wrapped in a solemn atmosphere. Claire sat quietly, waiting for the judge's words. Next to her, a social worker accompanied Daniel. When the verdict was read, a moment of silence flowed through the courtroom. But suddenly, Andrew stood up and shouted at Claire, "It's your fault! You ruined everything!" Julia shouted just as loudly, "I'm more suitable for Andrew than you. That child is weak and useless, just like you." As guards restrained the two, Claire quietly closed her eyes. Her parents silently bowed their heads, but there was no color of regret in their eyes. Claire looked at them one last time and bid farewell in her heart. 3 months later, Claire and Daniel had moved to a small mountain town in Colorado. They were renting a room in a guest house run by Jennifer's sister, Martha, and starting a new life. Claire had begun working as a nurse at a local clinic, and Daniel had started at a new school. "Daniel, how's school? Have you made new friends?" Claire asked her son one evening. "Yes, I play with Jason and Mike, but sometimes I remember that time and get scared," Daniel answered honestly. "I feel the same," Claire hugged her son. "But remember, we'll get through it together." Claire and Daniel regularly attended therapy, facing their trauma. Sometimes they were haunted by nightmares, but they felt they were healing little by little. One day, the principal of the town's elementary school, David Clark, visited the clinic. He had come to report on Daniel's progress at school. "Your son is truly remarkable. To be so positive and caring, despite everything he's been through." Claire smiled. "Thank you. Daniel is my pride." Over the next few weeks, David occasionally stopped by the clinic. He was kind and showed genuine interest in Claire and Daniel. Claire gradually began to open her heart to him. Meanwhile, in a distant prison, the bonds of the former family had completely collapsed. The relationship between Andrew and Julia had developed cracks in prison life, and Claire's parents continued to justify their actions. They never reached true repentance, but rather deepened their hatred. A year later, on Daniel's 8th birthday, Claire held a small party. Martha, Jennifer, David, and school friends attended the party. The house was filled with cake, presents, and the laughter of children. David stood next to Claire and spoke quietly. "Claire, I'm truly impressed by the strength of you and Daniel. You've taught me that there are things more precious than blood ties." Claire gazed out the window at the sunset over the distant mountains. "We've learned that family is something you choose. True family exists where there is love, trust, and respect." She turned her eyes back to her son's smiling face. From the terror and despair of being thrown off a cliff, they had climbed up, together, hand in hand, and were now finding new bonds, a new family. Claire was certain, true family is not about blood ties, but about bonds of love that protect and support each other. And she and Daniel were living proof of that.